Hey, what's up guys? Today we'll be drawing Kamen Rider Black RX from Kamen Riders. In this short video tutorial, I will be going over the step-by-step of how to create this Kamen Rider RX, Black RX drawing from start to finish. Check out the video chapters in the description below to preview all the steps or to skip to the chapter that interests you the most. And if you already love what you see on this completed drawing, go ahead and hit like and subscribe. Now let's take a look at the materials we need for this drawing. You're going to need a pencil, a black marker, an eraser, a thick black marker, a thin black marker, and some color pencils. So the colors I have right here is a red for the eyes, the gold for his symbol, emblem, and belt buckle. I have a silver or a gray for all the silver parts. I have a green for the green part of his armor. And I have a black for all the black part for his armor. And I'm also using a black for the overall shadow. Okay? So when I'm done with the midtone, this is the color that I'm going to overlay for the shadow. This is the black. Just don't draw too heavily. Alright, so I'll be spending a lot of times in the speed drawing mode, drawing really fast. But feel free to pause the video whenever you like and catch up with me and draw along. Okay? Let's get started. Now, before we start our drawing, let's take a look at some reference pictures of Kamen Rider Black RX and find out what shapes and forms we can use to create our drawing. Now, I was able to find an official inset, on the show, accurate picture of Kamen Rider Black RX, but he is in like a standard pose, and I think it's a little bit boring. So what I did is I found a pretty accurate rendition of this figure, but it's an action figure, it's a toy. Okay, so I'm actually going to utilize this pose, but double check with all the details to make sure that it's correct to the show version, the accurate show version. Okay, so but as you can see, if we analyze the pose, we can draw kind of like an oval for the face. Okay, so an oval for the face. I'm putting my cross. Okay, and I'm gonna draw another circle for the torso and a circle for the hip. So I'm gonna do a circle for the torso and then a circle for the hip, like that. Okay, and then the leg kind of goes in this direction. So in the beginning, I'm just going to be doing kind of like stick figures. Okay, so this legs will come out, and I'm going to draw a small circle for the knee joint. They come out this way, and then the other leg goes out that direction. I'm going to draw a circle for the knee joint, comes back in. That's the other foot. Okay, so the arms as well. Okay, 2 circles for the shoulder joints, come out. 1 joint for the elbow, and then a bigger circle for the fist. So again, come out. Like that. 1 joint for the elbow, a circle for the fist, then the fingers. Okay? So, build out your mannequin like this. It's like when you're creating a figure from scratch, it's like you're building from the skeleton. So, imagine that as a skeleton, and then you're going to put in the muscle, right? So, then you're going to start making the figure thicker where it needs to be. Okay? And slowly adding the detail. Okay? And that's how we'll have our character. Alright, so let's take a look at the lighting direction. Like we're going to design our lighting because we're based this off of not another person's artwork, but something from reality. So we're going to design the lighting a little bit. But we're always going to get what's real in the reality and use that as a reference. So both in this picture and that picture, we see that the lighting is coming from this direction. Mainly because I see a highlight right here. I see highlight right here, here. This left side of the leg, this left side of the leg. So I'm pretty sure that, okay, lighting is all coming from the top left corner. Okay, so now we have all the information we need to start our drawing. Let's start roughing in the basic shapes and forms. This I actually consider it to be the most important stage of the drawing because it is the foundation of everything else that comes after. I know you're looking at a stick figure right now, okay? But slowly we're going to add form to it. Right now maybe it's just a stick figure, but you're deciding the composition, you're deciding the layout, you're deciding the anatomy, you're deciding the pose. A lot of key things are decided at this stage, okay? Now another thing is, notice how I draw very lightly at this stage. It is to avoid committing to any lines too soon. Now when I start to refine the drawing in a second, the more definitive lines I'm going to draw heavier. And then the rough sketch is going to feel like it's fading away as my refined line work emerge from the basic shapes and forms. Okay, so at this stage, I'm not worried about any details, any patterns on his body, any gears, any pads, any of that, not even the mask. I just want to make sure that the pose is right, the anatomy is right, the proportion is right. Okay, so now if you're not happy at this stage right now, keep working on it until you do. Make sure your anatomy and composition are accurate. Remember, we're learning from the accurate version. We're learning from the real thing. Okay, and after you master the real thing, you can go ahead and give it your own take, make your own version and make your own design. But before that, learn how to draw it right according to what it really looks like. Okay, so now if you think what is ready to go, next I'm gonna start refining the shapes. Okay, so instead of like a stick figure, you're gonna see me start refining the shapes, and the body features gonna come out, the muscle, the leg, the arms. Okay, all right, let's do that. See how like the basic shape and form, it feels like it's faded away. Now I have my rough sketch. Okay, so learn to draw with short and repetitive strokes. Now still draw very lightly. Okay, but find the right line, find the definitive line amongst your very rough lines. And when you found it, draw heavier. Okay, and you'll see that the real line work will emerge from the rough lines. Okay, so now I know we've made a long way from basic shapes and forms, but now we have the pose. Okay, all good, nailed down. We have like all the body parts in there. It looks nice. Okay, and this can literally at this stage turn into any character you want. But this is actually one of like a Kamen Rider Black RX like signature pose. So just from this pose, if you've seen the show before, it's one of my favorite shows when I was a little kid. Oh, that probably is Kamen Rider Black RX. Okay, so next I'm gonna go another pass on it with my pencil, and this time I'm actually gonna start drawing out the details. Okay, so let's give it a go. Now when I draw the details, I'm gonna constantly reference what it looks like on the real show. Because like I said, this is a very good rendition of the real thing as a toy, but it's still a toy. Like at the end of the day, I still want to look at the real thing and know what it really looks like. Okay, and I'm gonna constantly go back and forth these two. Okay, and just double check and make sure that I'm adding all the right details, so it's like as close as possible. Okay, to the real Kamen Rider Black RX. See, now we have a refined drawing, like your rough sketch feel like it's faded away. And now the refined drawing is emerging from the rough draft. Okay, so this is really like the fun part, you have your pose in there, you have the anatomy right, you have the composition, it's exactly where it needs to be on your paper, and you're just really looking at the reference or looking at your inspiration, enjoying the process of putting in the nice details, putting in the nice trims, putting the nice patterns on his body, and see it come to life. And nothing will go wrong because you spend the time it needs to take on the basic shapes and forms, on the anatomy, on the composition, on the pose. So now it's just fun. Okay, now next we're going to trace the pencil drawing with the marker and then erase the pencil drawing afterwards. Okay, so pay attention to some of the areas where forms overlap. For example, right here where the folds are. Okay, so you'll see that whenever I have like a surface or like the boots, like wrapping around the leg, okay, I would kind of exaggerate those little details, like right here, just punch it out a little bit. It makes the entire drawing look more dynamic. Okay, so the trick here is to keep rotating your paper to produce smoother lines. And remember that you don't have to trace like a very long line with one stroke. You can always break it up into smaller stroke as long as it looks continuous. So let me show you. Let's say I am tracing this leg line right here, okay? It's 1, 2, 3, okay? See if I'm doing this line? It's 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? Doesn't need to be one line. Alright, so I hope you're enjoying the tutorial so far. Now remember to hit like and subscribe, okay? It is the biggest appreciation I can get from you guys. Now let's start tracing. Okay, so when you erase the pencil drawing, make sure you hold down the paper with the other hand so that you don't risk wrinkle or creasing up your paper, okay? So, now the next color is coloring. Next step is coloring. Now most object you draw will have highlight, shadow, and midtone. Now we can overlay, on a white piece of paper, we can overlay color to make a color darker, but we can't really overlay color to make a color lighter. So, like for all the what I'm gonna do is see these highlight areas right here that I already kind of know from my reference. I'm going to leave those area white intentionally, okay? And I'm just going to color the rest of the areas with a midtone. And after that, I'm going to throw on the shadow on top of the midtone. We're going to analyze the shadow later on. But for now, let's just put in the midtones, but do not color in the highlights, okay? So a lot of times, the white highlights, I'll just leave it white because it makes the highlights more noticeable and your form will just look more dimensional. Now, if I do color in the highlights, it will be just like a very light layer of the midtone. And that'll be like my last step, okay? So now when you color, try to color in the direction of the form instead of just drawing in random directions. It'll give you coloring a more consistent texture, okay? For example, let's say I am just coloring this leg right now. So what I would do is instead of just drawing this way, that way, this way, that way. Now it is a technique, later on I can go over that, but to begin, you want to try to just color same direction of the form, okay? Alright, so now I'm going to start with the lightest color or the smallest area. So I'm going to start with the eyes, okay, and the silver area and the gold, because those are just little areas it's very easy to take care of, okay? And then I'll work my way to the green and then the black. Okay, now that we have all the midtones in there, we're going to take a look at the shadows, okay? So when it comes to shadow, there's foam shadow and there's cast shadow, okay? So on both of our reference here, we don't see a lot of cast shadow here. We'll see very soft foam shadow, and that is probably the way I'm going to render my drawing, okay? Now, when it comes to the shadow, the midtone, we're referencing from the picture. We're kind of leaving out where the highlight should be. But when it comes to shadow is probably like the thing that's going to pop it out the most, okay? So I'm actually going to design the shadows. Like, we look at this, we kind of know like, oh, okay, the lighting coming from that direction, where the general highlight should be, where the general shadow should be. But remember, like realistic lighting, it's very hard to compare realistic lighting with like design lighting in your drawing. When you're designing lighting, you're drawing, like you can change things up based on and just make for aesthetic. You know, like some lighting scenarios doesn't have to be real. You can push somewhere areas darker if you want to punch something out. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to design the shadows, but keeping in mind what the realistic thing look like. So we know the light is going to come from this area down, and that's how I'm going to render everything. So I'm going to see my shadow. All my shadow on kind of like the bottom right position, okay? Alright, so I know it looks pretty flat with just a midtone right now, but watch this. See how after we put in the shadow, the whole drawing becomes more dimensional? That's because with your highlight, midtone, shadow combined, everything will read as a 3D form instead of a 2D flat shapes. Okay, so I know it looks awesome already, but we're going to make it look even better by making the profile lines thicker. Now, profile lines are the outermost borderline of each major forms, like the head, the arm, the legs, the body. Patterns on the body or like small facial features, those are detail lines, they're not profile lines. So when you make the profile lines thicker, the whole form will read more clear and the whole character will pop off the page. So let me show you how this works. And there we have it. Kamen Rider Black RX from Kamen Rider. Now, I hope you guys enjoyed this drawing tutorial. Let me know in the comments below what we should draw next. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Now remember, drawing is like playing the piano. You can have the best instructor and the best music sheet in front of you. You might even know the music very well, but it is only through practice that you will become better and become what you want to be. Now the whole point of my videos is to provide side-by-side training for you on a daily basis, like riding a bicycle. I might have to hold your hand in the beginning, but just keep drawing, and before you know it, you'll be flying.